The fog after awakening. Somewhere along your path of awakening, perhaps after a profound spiritual insight or a personal crisis, you felt that something had shifted. You saw through the illusion, the patterns, the noise. And then came the silence. At first it was powerful, even uplifting. But gradually, that sense of meaning simply began to fade. Not overnight, not with drama, but quietly. As if your soul had turned down the volume of life and forgotten to turn it back up again. You stopped chasing, you stopped caring, not in a reckless way, but in that quiet existential sigh. And then the question began to whisper louder and louder. Why do I feel so numb now that I finally see the truth? Here lies a strange paradox. We expect spiritual awakening to ignite our passion, to fill us with fire. But for many, especially the deeply introspective, the empaths, the seekers, the opposite happens. It empties us. I remember speaking with a friend, highly intelligent, spiritually inclined, devoted to all the right books, Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, Krishnamurti. She went through a dark night of the soul, and then a sudden powerful awakening. She understood. She said she had seen through the illusion of identity, of ego, of the endless race for external success, and yet 2 months later, she lay staring at the ceiling, barely able to get out of bed. She told me I used to cry because I hadn't achieved enough. Now I don't care if I achieve anything at all. I thought awakening would ignite me, not leave me like this. This is the beginning of a psychological death, the death of who you thought you were. The structures that once gave your life meaning, goals, careers, relationships begin to collapse. Even your sense of time begins to unravel. But here's the catch. Jung pointed out that your ego has not disappeared. It is simply confused. It has lost the map, and without a new map, motivation vanishes. So it's not that you are depressed. It's not that you have lost motivation. You are suspended in a liminal state, awakened from something, but not yet awakened to something else. And this is where the most mysterious part begins. What you are feeling is not failure. It is not clinical depression or anxiety. It is something ancient and sacred. Jung warned that our modern world does everything it can to avoid this phase, this sacred pause, this emptiness, this interval. Yet he believed it was essential for true individuation, for becoming your authentic self. But no one tells you this, do they? And that is exactly what we are going to explore. What is really happening in your psyche after awakening? And why this loss of motivation may in fact be the greatest spiritual renewal you will ever experience if you understand it correctly. Before we continue, if you love expanding consciousness and exploring the deeper layers of life, be sure to subscribe to The Depth Within. This channel exists to make the invisible visible and to support those who walk the strange and untamed path of awakening. So if you find yourself drifting in this fog, wondering where your spark has gone, no, you are not broken. You are moving through a psychological shift so deep that most people cannot even name it. A transformation that does not simply change your thoughts, it rewires your entire operating system. All the goals you once chased, the to-do lists, the 5-year plans, the playlists of hustle culture no longer move you. Not because you have failed, but because the very system of motivation itself is collapsing. Carl Jung foresaw this long before it became a hashtag on social media. So let's break it down. For most of your life, your motivation came from the ego identity, the I you thought you were. You wanted to prove yourself, to be noticed, to be successful, to be loved. That is not wrong. It is simply a part of human development. Jung called it the persona, the mask we wear to function in society. But awakening tears that mask away. Suddenly you stop trying to please. You stop playing the game because you see the game itself. And this is where it becomes strange. Without the mask, your old goals no longer fit. They were written for a character who no longer exists. Now you are like an actor who has stepped off the stage and forgotten their lines. That is why you feel unmotivated. You have not lost your drive. You have simply outgrown the fuel that once sustained it. Carl Jung believed we are not here to serve the ego. We are here to integrate it, to align it with something greater. He called this individuation, the journey of transformation from a fragmented identity into a unified whole self. Not the small I that craves praise, but the transcendent I, the soul center within you connected to everything. And this self does not care about status or approval or even clarity. It exists only to express truth. And so after awakening, your psyche begins to reconfigure. It begins to reject everything false-forced or ego-driven. Jobs, relationships, ambitions, even that vision board you crafted in 2021. That is why awakening is so often described as both liberating and disorienting. But Jung warned, if you stop here, you get stuck. Some awaken and then fall into the trap of spiritual bypassing. They convince themselves that nothing matters, that everything is illusion. And so they disconnect, they drift, they go numb. They mistake detachment for disconnection. But the self wants something more. It wants to live through you. It wants to bring heaven into this human body. It does not reject the world, it redefines your place in it. And to step into this, you must pass through the strange middle phase that few can even imagine. Jung said enlightenment does not come by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. It sounds beautiful until you realize what it truly means. Awakening is not the end. It is only the beginning.